peer pressure, obviously we all have that reference to when we were teenagers and we felt peer pressure to do things and we felt like we had to, and it was a bad thing, right?
It was really a bad thing.
Yeah. And then as we get to become adults, we realize that things like accountability and having little groups of people that encourage you to do stuff, actually peer pressure can also be a positive thing, right? More than it was when you were younger, because you were so lazy, I guess, as a teenager.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I like the accountability part is really, really good, because that's something, if you're goal-oriented, you want to move, you want to grow as a person, that accountability part of that is super important as well for you to actually take the steps, that you have someone there that is sort of, hey, come on, let's, what did you do now in order to get your goals, et cetera, et cetera.
So that's an interesting question. When is, if we still call it peer pressure, when is peer pressure a positive thing? I have an idea in my head now that I said.
Oh, really?
That,
you do that? Yeah, you do that. Yeah, but I do that as well. I think the peer pressure is good for you when you're actually and consciously think that it's good. You know that it could be a little bit hard. You feel a little bit pressure, but you know that by listening to this group of people or the peers, you could actually take a step forward and grow as the person you are and do something that scared you, but when coming out on the other side, it is really good for you.
Yeah.
What do you think?
One thing that came up for me was that peer pressure is positive when you are aligned, right? So I think what happens is sometimes, especially when we're moving in fast-paced organizations, right? Things are happening so fast. We have so much to do. And then we get dragged into different situations. But if we actually have, like, let's say the strategy in place, we have the kind of goals and the milestones set up before us in some way, right? And then we're running full on. If someone's saying, come on, yeah, you can make, whatever it might be, then that peer pressure can be really positive, because even though at that moment, right, so I guess it's momentary peer pressure that can help us, push through.
Exactly, yeah.
When it's not good in organization.
Because then you're held accountable.
Yeah. And you're held accountable. But what about when it's not good in organizations? Let's touch on that. What happens in the kind of situations where peer pressure is affecting someone to a negative point, maybe even like they start to go towards burnout or whatever it might be?
I think that peer pressure can push people out of their integrity. And it can be hard sometimes to stand up for your beliefs and your thoughts when a group of people do not dare to do the same. And when they're not being supportive, it can be super hard to be that person that is alone in an important question. But I think as well that it's important for leaders that have these heavier roles, so to speak, to be aligned with their integrity, so that they are able to actually stand for the views and their opinions, and because that's what you're there for. You can't be afraid of being alone or left alone with your opinion. You have to be there with that.
It's interesting. It reminds me, there are these like psychological studies where they take a group of people, they put them in a circle, and then they put something in the center, and they say, that's the color orange, right? And as they go around, they have all these people that have already been, kind of primed to say, oh yeah, it's orange, orange, orange. And then when it comes to the person who's actually the test subject in this case, it's a green object. We could agree that it's a green objectively. But when it comes to them, many times, like a really huge statistical number, say it's orange, even though it's green. And they've been, obviously the other people in the study are coerced and they're meant to do that, but it really shows how influenced we are by the people around us. And that brings me to the question of like yes-sayers. When you have a whole group of people around, let's say a CEO, since you like to deal with CEOs, you have a whole bunch of people around this person, right? And they're all saying yes, yes, yes. And then you, as whatever your division is, has to say no. What happens there?
Oh, that depends. It could be very political. It depends on the organization, I would say. I would probably always stand up for, being the no-sayer. And I've done that. It's not always easy. But I think that, it can be super hard. It depends also on the CEO and the colleagues. If they're accepting that you dare to be in that zone and still have respect for the competence, etc., etc. Sometimes people feel threatened when someone is having a different opinion, and that's uncomfortable. And when being uncomfortable, some people have a tendency to sort of push away and not being that leader that actually lifts up the different angles that you have to in order to grow and to innovate or develop as a company or as a group.
It makes me think of, you and I have talked a lot about entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
how entrepreneurs are already
Oh, wow,
these
yeah.
kind of odd people in the
Exactly,
organization
yeah.
who have all these ideas and they have lots of creativity and everything like that. But often they face peer pressure against them to sort of get in line. And so how do we, as organizations, because they're not usually, let's say, in the higher up, in the biggest decision-making structure often, right? They're people that are at different levels, all different levels through an organization. How do we enable or encourage those people to stand up to the peer pressure to sort of do the status quo and at the same time keep the wheels running? So entrepreneurship and peer pressure.
Oh my goodness, that was a big question, right?
Yeah.
I think it comes already from the board of management. You have to have the values in place in the company. You have to have sort of a culture set that welcomes innovation, that people listen to innovation and want to hear about innovation and respect that innovation is a part that drives us forward, and allow that space to be. But it has to be said as something that comes from within in the behavior in the organization. And that cannot only be, written down. That has to come from within, from the leaders and from the CEO. You have to sort of embrace that part.
It's not
It's difficult.
It's not like an easy thing, is it? Because
No.
Should organizations be like kind of single focused and driven towards things? It could even be in pockets, but should like, if peer pressure were a good thing and we're going to all do this in the same way, in the same direction, row in the same direction, whatever it might be, right? And then someone's like outlying, that could be annoying too, right? In a negative way. When should we say, okay, actually, either get in line or get out, right? That's a hard question, but like, when do you say that? When do you say, you know what? Yeah, we want to go in this direction.
I'm not sure that I fully agree with that. It has to do with peer pressure.
Okay.
For me, that has to do with, do you believe in the vision in the company? Do you believe in our targets and our goal? Do you want to be on our journey? Do you want to be in a community? And a community is good. Peer pressure is something different. In that sense.
Yeah, so it's a decision, but someone might feel like they're being pressurized. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah, but you chose the company, probably. You've chosen to be there for a reason. Not only, I hope, to make money, but also to actually contribute because you do believe in the company and the company values or something that sort of intrigued you from the beginning.
Yeah.
And if you lose that kind of interest, do you still want to be part of it? Do you still,
Yeah, so we can't maybe even call it peer pressure, even though the person might feel pressurized. This is the weird thing, right?
No, exactly, yeah.
So whose perspective do we take when we deal with this question? Like if someone feels uncomfortable and unhappy with the direction, and the direction is clear, when do we say, that's not peer pressure, that's not someone trying to manipulate you into doing something you shouldn't do. That's our strategy, our vision, and the direction we want to move in, and maybe it's not a fit. I guess that's,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It could be a non-fit. But then you can, as an organization, you can also help that person to, find a better fit.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You can part ways.
Yeah.
And you can do that in good ways and bad ways, but choose the good one.
All right, so a couple of tips for leaders who are dealing with peer pressure in their organizations. Just to round up here, what would you say? Like if you're in an organization, you look at something's happening around, you have some kind of things that aren't quite right, you feel like the alignment and the vision are pretty good and everyone sort of has been communicated with, but there's some kind of peer pressure in the group. What would you say as a tip to help to work with that?
Oh, I think that, being brave enough as a leader to, first of all, welcome each and every opinion, and take that with curiosity. You don't have to agree with everything you hear. You don't have to go on everything you hear, but just to sort of, welcome all innovation, all ideas, and to encourage your team to do the same. That we have respect for everyone's ideas in time and in place, obviously, because I think that when people are being listened to and heard, you get so much more out of them, obviously, but also you don't want to miss out on all the good ideas because they're out there, and you are not the master of the universe, sort of, just because you're a leader, you don't know everything. You should surround yourself with people that do. So you should have, less prestige in trying to know everything yourself, but listening to people around you, and using peer pressure for the good sake, for the community part, for, let's do this together and create motivation and engagement.
Perfect, thank you. That was really great. I mean, I got a lot of insights, and I think that if you were a leader and heard that, you'd be like, oh yeah, that rings true, so thanks. I think that's fantastic. And it made me think about, listening. When you said listening, like, we're really happy to hear from viewers who want to contribute a topic or something for us to sort of get into, because this is one of the reasons that we took up peer pressure today.
Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Super. Thanks.
Yeah.